Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, your mind racing with worries about the future or regrets about the past? Maybe it's the weight of a difficult day, or the quiet ache of feeling like something's missing, even when life seems full. If you're watching this, you're likely someone who's searching for a way to find peace, to make sense of the chaos that sometimes creeps into our hearts. I'm here to share something profound, something that's been a guiding light. For millions over centuries, the wisdom of Buddhism, specifically the three signatures, or the three marks of existence. These teachings can help us understand why we suffer, why life feels so fleeting, and how we can find a deeper sense of calm and purpose. Stick with me, because by the end of this journey, you'll have practical tools to bring more peace into your daily life, no matter what challenges you face. Let's start with a moment of honesty. Life, for all its beauty, can feel like a constant tug-of-war. One day you're on top of the world, and the next, you're wrestling with doubt, stress, or even just the monotony of routine.
For many of us, especially as we navigate the rich and complex years between 50 and 65, there's a longing to find meaning, to feel grounded. The three signatures of Buddhism, impermanence, suffering, and non-self, offer a way to see these
struggles not as burdens, but as opportunities for growth and liberation. They're like a map, showing us where we are and pointing us toward a place of greater ease. Let's begin with the first mark, impermanence, or anicca. Everything in life changes. The seasons shift, our bodies age, relationships evolve, and even our deepest emotions come and go like clouds in the sky. This might sound unsettling at first. After all, we often crave stability. But here's where Buddhist wisdom shines. When we resist change, when we cling to things staying the same, we create tension in our hearts. Think about a time you held on to something tightly, a job, a relationship, even a version of yourself you loved. When it changed, did you feel that pang of loss? That's because we often tie our happiness to things being permanent, when in
truth, nothing is. Buddhism teaches us that embracing impermanence can be freeing.
Instead of fighting change, we can learn to flow with it. Imagine sitting by a river, watching the water move past. You don't try to grab the water or make it stop. You simply let it be. That's the mindset we're aiming for. One way to start is through a simple mindfulness practice. Try this. Each morning, take 5 minutes to sit quietly. Notice your breath, the way it rises and falls, never the same twice. Then, as you go through your day, pause when you feel yourself resisting change. Maybe it's frustration at a delayed plan or sadness over a memory. Gently remind yourself, this is impermanent. It's okay to let it pass. This small act of awareness can soften the edges of life's transitions. Let me share a story to bring this to life. I once met an older woman named Margaret at a meditation retreat. She was in her late 50s, recently retired, and struggling with the loss of her sense of purpose. Her career had defined her for decades, and without it, she felt adrift. She told me how she'd spend hours ruminating, wishing she could go back. During the retreat, she learned about impermanence and began practicing mindfulness. She started small, noticing the changing colors of the leaves each day, the way her moods shifted, even the fleeting joy of a warm cup of tea. Over time, she stopped clinging to her old identity and began to embrace the new possibilities in her life. Volunteering, gardening, even writing poetry. Margaret found that by accepting change, she wasn't losing herself. She was discovering a new way to be. Why does this work? Because when we align with the truth of impermanence, we stop fighting reality. We begin to see life as a series of moments, each one precious because it's fleeting. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it's a practice worth starting. You don't need to be a monk or meditate for hours. Just begin where you are with small intentional steps. Notice the impermanence around you, the way the light changes in your home, the ebb and flow of your thoughts. Let these observations remind you that change is natural, and you have the power to move through it with grace. As we ease into this understanding, I want to encourage you. You're already taking a brave step by exploring these ideas. Changing how we see the world isn't easy. It's like tending a garden. You plant seeds, water them, and wait patiently for growth. But every moment you spend practicing awareness, every time you pause to breathe and let go, you're nurturing that inner peace. Keep going. You're not alone on this path, and every step counts. Now let's carry this thread forward. You've started to see how impermanence shapes our lives, how it invites us to let go of resistance and find freedom in change. But what about those moments when life feels heavy, when suffering seems to linger like an unwelcome guest? That's where the second mark of Buddhism, dukkha, or suffering, comes in. It's not just about pain or hardship. It's about the subtle dissatisfaction we feel when life doesn't go as planned. Maybe it's the frustration of a disagreement with a loved one, the anxiety of an uncertain future, or even the quiet restlessness that creeps in on a Sunday afternoon. Buddhism doesn't shy away from suffering. It looks at it squarely and says, this is part of being human. But it also offers a way through. The root of suffering, according to Buddhist teaching, often lies in our attachment, our desire for things to be different than they are. We want pleasure to last, pain to vanish, and life to bend to our wishes. When it doesn't, we feel that sting of dukkha. But here's the good news. By understanding this, we can begin to ease our own suffering. One practical way to work with dukkha is through loving-kindness meditation, or metta. This practice helps us cultivate compassion for ourselves and others, softening the grip of negative emotions. Here's how you can try it. Find a quiet space and sit comfortably. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Then, silently repeat these phrases. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. Picture yourself surrounded by warmth and light. After a few minutes, extend these wishes to someone you love, then to a neutral person, and finally to someone you find challenging. This practice isn't about ignoring pain. It's about creating space for kindness, even in the midst of difficulty. I once heard about a man named Robert, who was in his early 60s and grappling with resentment after a falling out with his brother. The bitterness consumed him, coloring his days with anger. Through a Buddhist community, he learned about metta and began practicing it daily. At first, he struggled to send kind wishes to his brother, but over weeks, he noticed a shift. The anger didn't disappear, but it loosened its hold. He started to see his brother's actions as part of a larger web of human imperfection, not a personal attack. Eventually they reconciled, not perfectly, but enough to restore a sense of connection. Robert's story shows how compassion can transform suffering, not by erasing it, but by changing how we relate to it. This practice of loving kindness is powerful because it reminds us that suffering is universal. We all feel it, and we all long for relief. By offering kindness to ourselves and others, we create a ripple effect, easing our own pain and fostering connection. Try it this week. Just 5 minutes a day. Notice how it feels to hold yourself with gentleness, to wish well for others, even those who challenge you. As you begin to explore dukkha and practice compassion, you're building a foundation for lasting peace. It's not about escaping suffering. That's impossible in this human life. It's about meeting it with wisdom and care. You're doing something profound by engaging with these teachings, and I want to honor that. Keep practicing. Keep being patient with yourself. You're planting seeds that will grow in ways you might not yet see. Let's take this journey deeper now. You've explored impermanence and suffering, two truths that shape our experience. But there's a third mark, anatta, or non-self, that can feel both mysterious and transformative. At its core, anatta teaches that there's no fixed, unchanging self at the center of our being. This might sound abstract, but it's incredibly practical. We often define ourselves by our roles, our achievements, or our struggles. I'm a parent, a professional, a failure, a success. But these are just labels, temporary and fluid. Clinging to them creates suffering because they're as impermanent as everything else. Understanding anatta invites us to let go of rigid ideas about who we are. It's not about denying our individuality, but about seeing ourselves as part of a larger, ever-changing flow. Think of yourself as a wave in the ocean, distinct for a moment, but inseparable from the water. This perspective can free us from the pressure to be a certain way and open us to new possibilities. One way to explore anatta is through a practice called self-inquiry. When you notice a strong emotion, say frustration or pride, pause and ask, who is feeling this? You might think, well, it's me, but look closer. Is it your body, your thoughts, your roles? You'll start to see that these are just parts of your experience, not a solid self. This practice can be grounding, especially when you feel stuck in a story about who you are. I once met a woman named Susan, who was in her late 60s and felt trapped by her identity as the responsible one in her family. She carried everyone's burdens, always putting herself last. Through studying anatta, she began to question this role. She practiced self-inquiry, asking, who is this responsible one? Over time, she realized it was a habit, not her essence. She started setting boundaries, saying no when needed, and rediscovering her love for painting. Susan didn't stop caring for her family, but she stopped letting that role define her. She found a lightness she hadn't felt in years. This teaching of anatta works because it loosens our grip on the stories we tell ourselves. It reminds us that we're not fixed. We're free to grow, to change, to let go of what no longer serves us. Try self-inquiry this week. When you feel caught in an emotion or role, pause and ask, who is this? See what arises. It's a gentle way to step back and find clarity. As we weave these three marks together, impermanence, suffering, and non-self, you're starting to see how they form a path to peace. They're not just ideas, they're tools for living with more ease and joy. You've already taken meaningful steps by engaging with these teachings. Keep going, keep exploring. You're not just watching a video, you're beginning a journey of transformation. Let's bring this all together now. The three signatures of Buddhism, impermanence, suffering, and non-self, are more than ancient teachings. They're a guide for navigating the ups and downs of life. You've learned how to embrace change, meet suffering with compassion, and let go of rigid ideas about who you are. These practices, mindfulness, loving kindness, self-inquiry, are simple but profound. They don't require you to change your life overnight, just to show up day after day with curiosity and patience. I want to encourage you to keep practicing. Start small. 5 minutes of mindfulness, a moment of kindness, a question about who you are. These acts are like ripples in a pond, spreading outward to touch every part of your life. and you're not alone. There's a whole community out there, people just like you, exploring these teachings and finding peace. Share your journey, leave a comment, talk to a friend, join a local meditation group. Your story might inspire someone else, just as Margaret's, Robert's and Susan's stories inspire us. As you move forward, I wish you peace and happiness. May you find ease in the flow of life, compassion in the face of suffering, and freedom in letting go. You're on a beautiful path, and every step matters. Keep walking it with an open heart and a gentle spirit. Thank you for being here.